Hey YouTube, it's Matt with Olympus Reptiles, and for the first time in a fairly long time, I have notes. That's right, we actually prepared a little bit for this video. Now that does not mean I wrote a fucking script. I did not do that. It's just to remind me of my talking points and my ADHD-riddled brain. So we're going to continue our video series on reptile business. And we're going to break this down quite a bit for you. It seemed like there was a lot of excitement for this series. So we're going to try to cover multiple topics and kind of start from point A all the way to point Z and give you our insights along the way. We already kind of covered that in the introduction, so I'm not going to rehash all that. We're going to jump right into the first thing I want to talk about today, which is something really exciting. It's research. That's right. Everybody loves research. But seriously, if you're going to start a ball python business, and this is whether you're doing it one of two ways, whether you're jumping headlong in, and have saved up, $30,000 to invest, or whether you're acquiring a piece at a time. I don't care how you're doing it for this topic. Research is important. And if you don't do your research, you're setting yourself up for failure. Too many people have failed because they failed to do the research. They don't even get to make a dent in the market. They don't make a sound. I mean, the whole thing collapses around them before it ever even really gets started. So research is very important. The first thing you're going to need to research is obviously the species you're going to work with. For us, that was carpet pythons. And then while doing research with carpet pythons, I ran across a lot of crap with ball pythons. So it was carpet and ball pythons. And then I just like crotalus, so I did a lot of research on that. Now, within that research, the first thing you're going to have to research is going to be care. How do you want to care for these animals? How are you going to meet their needs? What are their needs going to be? Caging requirements, humidity requirements, heating requirements, feed requirements. Do they need to be cycled for breeding? Such as say you're breeding corn snakes and you're going to need to cool them and warm them and all those kind of things. What all do you really truly need to get this off the ground? That is going to be step one, is definitely the care. So you've got to research, how do I take care of whatever it is I'm breeding? I don't care if you're trying to breed cockroaches. You got to research their care. I can tell you from doing I've been in a lot of nasty places, okay? Not mine, not my places. Cockroaches are pretty easy to care for, but I don't really want to care for them. It's disgusting. The next thing you're going to have to research then, let's say you say, okay, I know what I want to work with. I want to work with ball pythons, and you've researched how to care for ball pythons, okay? You've got that figured out, you think. I'm going to say you think because research and experience are two vastly different things, which we'll cover later. But you've got to have that foundation laid, and that foundation is laid in research. If you don't do your research, then all the experience has nothing to relate back to, and you have no way to kind of compare the two and make your alterations and changes. So you've got to lay that foundation. You've got to do that research. The next thing I would say to research is the genetics and the morphs, however you want to call it. But it's really two different things. One, Kurt talked about off camera, we were setting this up, how he, started looking at World of Ball Pythons a lot, ran across Orange Dream. That's a great place to do research for genetics. Plus, there's a ton of other sources. Look at different things. Try to learn what the identifiers are. Try to see them in person. Go to shows, even if you're not buying. Put yourself in places where you can see the genetics, you can see the combos, you can understand what they look like, hopefully on more than just a computer screen, but that may be all you have. There's books out there. Of course, books get outdated very fast because new stuff comes out. But I know Kevin from Nerd has a great resource book out there. It's kind of expensive, It's Kevin from Nerd. But it's a great book. I think it's a complete guide to ball pythons. It really is fascinating. But anyway, do that research so you know what you're looking at, what you're working with, what you want to use, what your goals are going to be. It's hard to breed something like, say, ball pythons when you don't understand, a recessive trait versus an incomplete dominant trait. And when you also don't understand, when you do research, it's not just reading a genetics book. Because you can know all there is to know about genetics, come into the ball python world and have one of two things happen. Either A, be very, very confused, or B, really, really pissed off because the ball python world does not tend within the hobby to use the proper terms. So you have to understand that what the real things are and what the layman's terms the ball python community is using. For instance, codom. It's incomplete dominant. We say codom in the ball python world. It's getting better about it. but it's really not codom, right? We're really talking about an incomplete dominant trait. So you have to understand both, so you know what this person, this customer, or this person you're buying from is talking about. It also lets you know pretty quick if somebody that you're purchasing from or doing a deal with doesn't know their shit. Because if you've done your research and you're talking to a guy and he's showing you an albino and he's like, oh yeah, man, you breed this to a normal and you'll have albinos and woo, money, right? And you know he's an idiot. But if you didn't do your research on your genetics, you wouldn't know that that guy is a moron. Most people who are morons are going to tell you. I've told plenty of people in the world that I'm a moron. We've all done it. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I've gotten things wrong. Everybody does. But when you do your research, you're less likely to be taken advantage of by somebody who's truly trying to take advantage of you. So research into genetics and what type, into what else out there. And you're never going to know every ball python gene, man. There's so many. There's new crap coming all the time. There's crap that I think is just renamed crap from something else out there. Like butter lesser, you know. I mean, there's still debates that rage on about that, rage on about banana coral glow. But there's no way to know it all. But you should have a pretty good working knowledge of what's going on, especially what you want to work with before you dive into that business and start acquiring. Which brings me to the next point. So let's say now you've got your research done and you know how you want to care for these things and what needs to be provided, right? Then you also know what genetics and what morphs and what combos you want to work with. You know your recessives and your incomplete dominants. You know your things that don't have, or your lethal combos. That should be in there too. You know better than to breed spider to spider. You've also made your decision whether or not you want to work with spider. Hi, I choose to. But you also know spider to champagne, bad. Don't find out after you do it. Somebody's already learned that lesson. And unless you have a reason to do it, you know, you should have the knowledge within your research to not do that. Now, somebody's probably looking and probably thinks I'm yelling at them because they probably did that. I'm not. Just because you missed something is not the end of the world, but we should do our research. So the next thing you're going to research is pricing. And you're like, well, why pricing? Like, why do I need to research pricing? Well, you want to know when you're buying your animals, A, what should you expect upon a return for your investment? Now you have to understand when you look at pricing, if you can find pricing from 3 years ago and pricing from today, that's very, very relevant because it doesn't hold the same. Now, some things it does. I've sold albinos within $25 of the same cost for the last 3 years. I've sold pieds for the same cost for the last 3 years. I've sold bells for the same cost for the last 3 years. My price on spiders, pastels, bumblebees has all dropped, but nothing overly dramatic. I can tell you I will not be selling scaleless head for the same price I paid for it. And I am okay with that. I knew that going in because I did my research. So I didn't sit there and have something and then freak out, oh my God, the sky is falling. I wasn't at that point. I knew where I was and I was okay with it when I made the decision to buy into the project. Same with GHI. GHI Moho, I've gotten the same for the last 2 years. I don't know if it's going to stay that way. You need to know pricing. You need to be able to price your animals fairly, and you also should be buying your animals at a fair price. You know, you shouldn't be overpaying like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And if you don't do your research, you're going to find somebody who doesn't have the best of morals, and you're going to find somebody who's a good salesman. Like, I'll tell you what, I'm a good salesman. That's one thing I know I do well. And somebody's like, that's not shit. Trust me, I can sell things. I know it. Kurt can tell you I can do it. He's seen me do it. It's in my DNA. However, I know that if I go and I try to screw people over on something like a pastel, I find that new person that hasn't done their research, and I want to be like, oh yeah, I could do that. But also as a seller, that would get back quite possibly and really ruin my reputation. And I don't think it's cool to be the guy that rips somebody off. Like, that's not who I want to be. But there are people out there. I have a friend in particular who thinks it's hilarious if he can screw somebody over. I disagree with him. Calling him a friend is probably a very nice way to say it. But he finds it amusing. He's like, oh yeah, man, I sold it to this guy and I got this much for it. He didn't know what it was worth. He's a dumbass. So I can tell you from my own experience, those people exist. And if you don't do your pricing research, that guy can sell too. He's a really good salesman. They will rip you off. Some people in this industry are vampires. Make no bones about it. They don't care about their long-term reputation. They don't care about new people entering the hobby. And truth be told, even though I can tell you we do, because we want that person to come back to us again and again and again and trust us, also with us doing all the videos, our name is so out there, it's a little bit different situation. But some people think they're not going to stay in. I can screw them over and it's just fine. So pricing, do your research on your pricing. You know, and it's not hard to do. There's a lot of avenues out there you can use. Morph Market's a good one. That being said, when you research pricing, remember this: the cheapest snake is not the price. Like, okay, just because you find one that's rock bottom cheap, that does not set the market floor. I mean, you know, it's like anything, okay? That's where that one is. But if you're finding a lot of them in this range here, you know, then that's where you could kind of expect to be. And then all of a sudden there's this guy way up here. Why would you buy that? There's this guy way down here, and everything else is here. I might be leery of that, personally. So pricing. The third thing, or I guess, what is this? Well, this is the fourth thing, right? Fourth thing I suggest you research is your location. And you may be thinking, why does location matter? Well, I can tell you where we're located. We're here in the great city of Manhattan, Kansas. Actually, we're not inside the city. Location, local laws make a difference. If I was inside the city limits, there's things I'm doing that I could not legally do, okay? So know your local laws. That's one thing that's very important. Know what licensing is required, where you're at. Also, when you go to produce and sell animals, how are you going to do that? And your location makes a hell of a difference. Like I can tell you, if you live where we live, you know, Kansas City is about a 2-hour drive, and Kansas City has, I want to say, at least 6 reptile shows a year. I know Manhattan has 1 reptile show every year. Wichita has 2 reptile shows every year. So just within about a 2.5 hour drive for me, I can make it to 9 reptile shows that are one-day shows, and I can go and I can get rid of most of our stuff. I knew that going in because I researched my location. If you live near Denver, Denver's got a lot of shows now. Chicago, of course, has a lot of shows. If you're in a major city, there's probably enough stuff going on. But if you live in the middle of Wyoming, you know, out in the country, I don't know how close you are to a reptile show. And you've got to think, you know, about that, because it changes your overhead and it changes how things are going to be long term for you. Not saying you can't do it, okay? But you should research it and be cognizant of your location and where it is. And every location comes with problems. Ours comes with shipping issues. There's about a 3-month gap every year where I have a really hard time shipping things and feeling good about it. So we end up having to hold everything. And then we're just now about to get into the time of year where I can start shipping again. It's part of being in Kansas, man. So those are the things I would say for research that are very important. And I know I left out several. You cannot research too much. Once you're doing your research, or if you're sure you've done your research and you want to do this, the next thing I want to briefly talk about is financing. There is some serious issues to that. And whether you're going to start a business all at once, which I know some people have, I believe JKR did it that way, you know, where they had money that came in that they then invested and they started up a business. You know, if you're going to do that, you need to know your startup cost, you need to have your business plan, you need to have all of those things. You need to know how long your turnaround is going to be until you're actually making money. You probably need to have your paperwork done and form an LLC. There's going to be a guy out there, damn it, who's going to tell you, well, if you just leave it as a hobby, then they don't know. And bullshit, man. The IRS at some point is going to see that income. They can, because I report everything I purchase as a business person. So they're going to match it up at some point. And even if they don't, if something happens and you're not running as an LLC, then everything you have is subject to being liable for whatever could happen. A guy comes to your house to buy snakes, slips on some frozen piddle from your dog, falls and busts his hip. There you go. If you have an LLC, there's a lot of things that are protected. You need to do that. You need to be legit. Now, I'm not a business major. There's probably more than one way to skin that cat, but I'm saying you need to skin it. It is important, if you're going to be a business, to be a legit business. I can tell you with Kurt and I, we have 2 separate LLCs, one for Olympus Reptiles and one for the shop we're part owner of. They do not interact. They're 2 completely separate entities whose taxes are done separately, and they're done separate from our own taxes. That all then comes together. So do an LLC or do some type of business. Make yourself legit. It also does something else. If you have a customer you're trying to sell something to, especially something high-end, and you know, he knows that you're a legit business, it puts them at ease and more comfort. It seems like you're going to be there. You're going to be around. There's a reputation you care about. If you're just some dude in some basement somewhere and that's all they see you as, even if you're making the best thing ever and you're legit and you're all that, but you're not doing those things to make yourself legit, their view of you may be different. And truth be told, the customer's view of you, the customer across your table, their view of you is what's important, okay? It ain't what's real. What's real doesn't matter when you're selling something. Real is bullshit, okay? What matters is what they think. Now, if they see the truth and what the truth is great, then awesome. If they see bullshit, even though they're wrong, they're still going to walk away. So it's their opinion across that table that matters. So be real, be legit, form a business, do it the right way. So that's if you're going to do it all at once. Now, if you start like we did, you know, we did start as those guys in the basement, but we were also producing, what, our first year, like 7 snakes, and we kept 3 of them or 4 of them. So if you're doing that, you don't have a lot of animals, and you're selling 3 or 4 on Craigslist, or you're going to 1 show a year, and you're falling under the income levels where you can be just a hobby, then be a hobby. But if you're going to do it as a business, you're going to have to form an LLC. It's a little scary, but you need to do it. The other thing with finances are this, and we'll get more in depth at this at a time, but when you figure in your startup cost, you know, I always suggest a cushion too. Like for our business, for Olympus, we have a cushion, and we'll talk about exactly what cushion it is and why we chose that down the road in another video. But that cushion, it helps to operate as a chunk of money that we don't touch. And what I mean is, when we close accounts, you know, we leave that money set aside. It stays put, it stays in its own little place, and it just kind of hangs out there. And what that money is for is, let's say we have, you know, a major bill come up. Let's say the heater were to go out in the reptile house. Or let's say, you know, whatever it may be. It is a cushion to help offset that cost, whether it's pay for it all or pay for a big chunk, and then we have to get a loan. It doesn't matter how we would do it. But that money is set aside to help with those costs, those day-to-day operation costs. Let's say, you know, we needed to buy new equipment. That was a surprise. Our incubator shits the bed. We need one right now. That's how we do it. If you don't have that cushion and a bad thing happens and there's no money there to deal with it, you're fucked. So build a cushion. Build a little cushion, have a little nest egg, and pretend it doesn't exist. And do your best to never, ever dip into it. But know if you have to keep your doors open and the snake's flowing, you can. That is not to be dipped into because you see a new morph you want. That is not to be dipped into because, hey, you want to buy a new banner for your table. That is not what that's for. It is for the oh shit moment that's probably going to happen at some point during your business. We've been very fortunate. I don't think we've had a huge oh shit moment where we've needed to get into that more than about $500 bucks. But they do happen, guys. They do happen. So that is some of the things that I would talk about. Have a financing plan, okay? Whether it's all at once or a piece at a time. Have a nest egg. You know, plan on those finances. Plan on what they are. And then do your damn research. You do those 2 things, then you'll be ready. Now we're going to slide over to Patreon. I meant to say in the first part, that's better marketing, which we'll do an entire video on marketing again. But, and talk about how we learn those lessons. Like what happened in our lives that taught us we needed to do those things and where that comes from and kind of how we're giving this advice, what it's based in, the real facts of why we believe the things we believe. Kurt, anything you want to add?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
You got to add something, man. I feel like I've been nonstop talking for like 10 minutes here. Probably longer.
No, I think you covered most of it.
I covered most of it. So there's a wise words from a wise man. Matt, you covered most of it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.